After you finish watching this video, you're going to be calling me the Albert Einstein of high ticket sales. So what I've just created here today is two formulas that you can use to decide one of two things: whether or not you should apply to an offer, or if a business has already asked you to join their team, whether or not you should accept that offer. Now, I want to caveat everything I'm going to say by there's more that goes into it, right? Maths and data and numbers isn't everything, but I do also calculate and factor in personal opinions and feelings into this calculation to make it more accurate and kind of more aligned. So essentially, I don't want to get too boring and technical, but I'm going to walk you through kind of the visual that you see here of the two formulas. Then I'm going to go into kind of more detail on each of them and show you exactly how it works and exactly what my thought process is, because I believe it's important that if you're going to use these, that you know how they work and why they work. And then the third thing I'm going to have you do, or I'm going to give you access to in this video, is a copy and paste formula or copy and paste prompt that you can plug into any AI. I assume any AI, I've only tested it on GPT, but any AI realistically, to have it do all of this maths for you, and all you have to do is just enter the data and information that's important. So without further ado, I'll walk through everything. Some of this stuff might not make sense. The way that I look at things might not be the way that you look at things. I'm a relatively analytical person, and so if that's not you, maybe some of this stuff might be complicated. But either way, what I will walk through is super important to anyone, because I get a lot of people that ask me, should I apply to this role? Should I apply to that role? Should I accept this offer? Should I accept that offer? And there is a lot of personal stuff that goes into that. And so I'll walk through all of that and whatever else here. So first and foremost, top one, the top formula here is going to get you your personalized pre-application OTE. That's what I'm referring to it as. And this is based on you as an individual, right? Not based on the offer or the business, but you and your personal alignment with the offer and the business's advertised OTE here, and the business's size, because we don't have all the details. So we want to be a little bit more cautious around OTEs, right? Just in general. And that's just a word of advice for anyone getting into the space, is like OTE on paper is not true OTE. And we can determine true OTE post-interview. But what this formula will do is it's going to take your alignment with two things: your alignment with the ICP and your alignment with the culture of the business, and create a multiple, right? An alignment multiple that we can then multiply by the advertised OTE, what the business says the OTE is, and the OTE multiple, which I've put here, is basically just based on, is the business big enough for OTE that they promote to likely be true or not, right? And if it's too small, then we slightly drop down what we multiply this alignment the OTE by, and then we get a personal pre-application OTE. Right? And the second part here, once we have that true OTE, which you'll ask questions about and get data on in the interview process, I have a video on my YouTube channel. Watch it after this one, which will essentially walk you through the questions to ask in the interview process to determine true OTE. I don't remember exactly what it's titled, but it's a later video. It was posted months ago, and you can just scroll by, and when you look at the titles, you'll figure out which one it is. I think it's something like, how to pick the right offer or something like that in high ticket sales. And so you watch that video, you get data in the interview process. And so post interview, we can multiply this same factor by the true OTE of the business and determine your personal post interview, more insight based OTE, right? Which is going to be based on how aligned you are with the offer and the offer, it's the money you can make in the offer, and determine a number that I would suggest is how much you could expect to make on average in that business. Because if you were really aligned with an offer, right? If this alignment figure is 20 out of 20 multiplied by 1.5, right? That OTE is going to be 50% higher, because we're 10 out of 10 aligned in all facets. And I've found this to be true, that the more aligned people are with the business, the more money they make in that business, because they get out of bed every day wanting to work, they go the extra mile, they have fun with what they're doing. It doesn't feel like a chore and like work every day getting up to get on calls, and people just make more money. But if alignment is really, really low, right? If we're at a 1 out of 10 and a 1 out of of 10, we're going to multiply by 0.15. And so the real OTE that you'd probably make in an offer like that is super low, because you're going to hate the calls you're getting on, you're going to hate the people you're speaking to, you're going to hate the culture of the team that you're around, and you're not going to perform. And so that's kind of the way that this works. But I'll walk you through kind of a more in-depth insight here. So here's exactly what we do step by step to calculate these personal OTEs. Formula number one, which is pre-application. It's going to take about 5 or 10 minutes of research to get this insight. Number one, we're going to find out ICP alignment. And this is just a personal rating that you give the offer out of 10 based on how much enjoyment you would get of speaking to prospects. Right? And I want you to have a long-term vision with this. Not just, I think I'd like it, right? Talking to these people. Really think about it. If you need to, do more research into the business and who they sell to, so that you can think in the next 6 months, right? In 6 months' time, would I still like talking to these people? Yes or no, right? And if it's a hell yes, absolutely, I love these type of people, we give it a 10 out of 10. If it's I think I would enjoy it, but I wouldn't love it, maybe we give it a 7 out of 10, right? If it's I'm really 50-50 on this, we give it a 5 out of 10. If it's, I hate these types of people, we give it a 1 out of 10. If you're ever thinking I'd hate talking to these people, I wouldn't even bother going through the rest of this process. I just wouldn't apply. But that's part one. We score that 1 out of 10. Part two is going to be team culture. Here is where that 5 to 10 minutes of research realistically is going to come in. What you want to do is you want to look into the culture of the business and team itself. Most of these businesses are not big enough to have I don't know what it is, that there's something for corporate businesses where you can look at is it Nextdoor or something like that? Anyway, where you can look into reviews from employees of a business, right? Most of the offers in the high ticket space are not going to be big enough to have one of those. And so what you want to do to determine kind of team culture alignment, and your perceived fit in this culture out of 10 is look at the founder. Look at their content on Instagram, look at ideally some long form content, right? And just scrub through it, right? Find a long form YouTube video that's 30 minutes, an hour long, get part of the way through it and listen to them talk. Do I like this person? Do I think I'd get along with this type of person? Yes or no? If it's a no, I'm probably going to rate this a 2 or 3 out of 10. If it's a, I don't think I'd mind, right? I'd probably rate them a 5 or a 6. If it's a hell yeah, this person seems awesome, I love their personality, it's a 10 out of 10, right? That's the position that you kind of want to be in, or the thought process you want to go through. Then what the formula does is we create an alignment percentage, which is the out of 10. So let's say we give it a 10 out of 10 and a 10 out of 10. ICP plus team, 10 plus 10 gives us 20, divided by 20 gives us 1, right? And then we multiply this alignment percentage by 1.5 to get our OTE multiple. This is the number we're going to multiply by our expected OTE to determine how much money I would personally make in this business. Because like I said, if I'm super aligned 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, I'm going to be multiplying by 1.5 because I can probably make a lot more money than an average person would in this offer because of that alignment. But if I'm a 5 out of 10 and a 5 out of 10, right, we're going to be multiplying by 0.75. So I'm going to be lower than the average because I'm very kind of neutral here and I want to be conservative with all of these numbers. So that's the maths that we're doing here in step one, right? Step two is where we determine the true OTE. And this is essentially based on business stability and advertised OTE. So advertised OTE is 10K per month. Right? That's what the business tells us is the OTE. Again, we want to be conservative. And so for smaller businesses, I'm going to expect that OTE is not what they say it is, simply because they're looking to get a higher level of talent in the door than they kind of truly deserve, right? And that's just the nature of business. I don't blame businesses for doing it. There's some businesses that have really bad practices around the OTE they promote and the true OTE of the company. But businesses want to hire the best person they can, and so they're going to set an expectation that's really high. Yeah, our on-track earnings should be 10K per month, when in reality, if things remained as they are and they had a regular everyday sales rep come in, the sales rep's probably going to make 5K, maybe 6K, right? And so the advertised OTE, and then we're going to look at the monthly revenue of the business, and we're going to create or we're going to determine what the revenue modifier is going to be of this OTE. For example, if the business is below 100K per month, and I think this is pretty conservative on the business's side, that the kind of numbers that I've given here, but we're going to multiply by 0.7. So this 10K OTE is going to turn into a 7K OTE, right? We're dropping down a decent amount there, right? If it's between 100 and 250, we're going to do a 0.8. If it's 250 to 500, we're going to do a 0.9. And if it's over 500K, usually you see businesses of that size that really talk a true OTE because they have the proof of multiple sales reps making X amount of money. And so that OTE is based on the true data. Whereas these smaller businesses don't have that data. And so they're kind of hoping and praying a little bit more, right? And so we're going to find our true OTE by multiplying advertised OTE, which is just whatever they told us it was, by the revenue modifier, which is determined by the revenue of the business, right? And that's going to give us our true OTE. And then step 3 is where we multiply the true OTE by our OTE multiplier, right? And that's going to give us our personal pre-application OTE, right? And so that's the process we go through here. Alignment, and then we get our personal multiplier, advertised OTE, OTE multiple, which is shown here. And then we get our personal pre-application OTE, right? Now, my calculation after this is this personal pre-application OTE at least 70% of what I need to make of like my baseline? Meaning, if someone came to me and said, here's a 5K OTE role, we want to hire you right now. If 5K is my baseline, right, that's as low as I'm going to go to accept an offer. If it's at least 70% of that, I would say, yes, you should apply. That's the maths that I do, because we don't want to miss out on opportunity. Worst case scenario, you go through the application and interview process and you turn down an offer because it actually turns out to be below your personal kind of baseline OTE, right? So that's the maths that we do here to determine yes or no, should I apply, shouldn't I apply, right? And again, ChatGPT will do all of this for you. Might sound a little bit complicated, but this is the maths behind it, right? The second formula is post-interview. So this is when we have more detail and more insight into everything. So this is where we're making a decision on yes, I accept, or no, I don't accept, right? Formula number 2, post-interview offer decision. Step 1, we're looking to get the insight of OTE multiple. We're going to have more insight on the ICP and team culture. And so this rating is going to just be more accurate. And so nothing changes. It's just you will likely give a different rating here and here than you did for the same offer here and here, simply because you have more information. In the interview, you get the opportunity to ask questions. You get to experience being around the culture. You're speaking to the sales manager or the business owner or a recruiter for the offer. And so you can feel that culture a lot more. You can ask questions about that culture. Not as good as kind of the vibe, in my opinion, because questions, like, someone can tell you what their culture is, but the way you feel about the culture you experience is actually what matters. And then ICP alignment, again, you can ask more questions. You can go into more detail about who they're selling to, who they're targeting, who's qualified, who's not, and get aligned on that, right? And so we do the exact same calculation here. Now, step 2 is going to be the real OTE. Now, I go over this in that other video that I was speaking about before, and so definitely watch that. The most easy way to calculate this is going to be total sales team revenue, right? If I'm applying for a closing role, that's just total monthly new cash collected by the closing team. Sorry, not new cash, but just total cash collected by the closing team divided by the number of closes. Right? If I'm applying for a setting role, we're going to look at total cash collected that is attributed to the setting team, because not all closed deals will come through a setter. Some offers, all of them will, but most offers will have some direct to calendar stuff that doesn't get triaged or doesn't speak to a setter. And so that number, right? Total setter attributed monthly cash collected divided by the number of setters, right? And so I go into this in a lot of detail on how to ask these questions, but ideally you want to get this data. And if this data doesn't exist or this data is too small of a scale to really make a determination, we can go into some other things that I speak about in that other video. But essentially we want to determine what the real OTE is based on current sales team performance, based on current volume of calls booked, current lead quality, current cash collected, based on the existing data. What is the real OTE? That's the maths that we do, here. There isn't really any involved in this, but this is the simplest way to do it. Don't just do this. If it's a smaller offer, we probably want to go more in the weeds of things. But then we do our final step, which is the same thing, which is our insight OTE multiple, right? Like with more insight, what is our personal OTE multiple? And then what's the real OTE? And that gives us our finalized, should I accept, should I not accept personal OTE. And my guideline is never accept an offer. It is if it is below your baseline OTE. If your finalized personal post-interview OTE is lower than that, I wouldn't accept the offer. That would just be the way that I go about it, because I don't want people accepting an offer that they're not going to be happy with the money they're making, because people won't perform if they're not happy. And so that's the maths that we do here. That's how all of these formulas kind of work. I hope I didn't bore you by talking about this stuff. I find this super cool and interesting, but maybe you don't. And so the prompt is right here. And I'm going to walk you through exactly how to use it, what it looks like when you do use it, just so you have that insight. So I will share the link to this doc in the description down below. All you got to do is come to this doc, copy this entire thing, just the whole thing here. It's all just there, so you can just paste it and paste it into ChatGPT, right? Or whatever you use, Grok, Gemini. It's going to ask you one question. Are you deciding whether to apply or deciding whether to accept after an interview? All you got to say is apply or accept. If I'm looking to apply to an offer, I'm just going to say apply. I'm going to hit enter, and now it's going to ask me questions, and it's just going to ask me questions about the data that it needs to know to make a decision on whether or not, and then it's going to tell me, should I apply or should I not apply, right? Number A, baseline acceptable OTE, right? This is your minimum viable income. I wouldn't say necessarily minimum viable income, but like this is where you would accept an offer, right? Let's say my baseline is 5K. That's where I would accept an offer. Let's say this offer, right, is advertising a 4K OTE. So it's below my minimum kind of baseline. Let's say the monthly revenue of the business is 500K per month. So it's a solid sized business, right? Let's say my ICP alignment is pretty solid. I think I'd enjoy talking to these people. My team culture alignment, I've got less insight. Let's give it a 7 out of 10, right? That's all I need to do. I hit enter on this, and then it's going to do this maths for me, and it's going to tell me my applied decision is yes. It's also going to give me the workings of this, right? The revenue modifier is a 0.1, so it's going to multiply this OTE by 0.1 to give us our true OTE of 4K because it's a big business. And then my personal OTE multiple is going to be 1.125 because I gave it an 8 and a 7, so that's totaling 15 out of 20 multiplied by the 1.5, so that's going to give me 1.125 multiplied by this 4K OTE is going to be my personal pre-interview OTE with less insight of 4.5K, right? And my threshold to apply is 70% of that baseline I gave, which is 50K, which would be 3,500. Obviously, 4,500 is bigger than 3,500. And so apply decision is yes, right? After this, you can just keep this chat open. It's going to ask you, what would you like to do next? Are you going to apply to another role? Are you going to assess an offer after an interview or update baseline? You don't need to update baseline. That's basically just there if you want to change the way that it does its calculation. So if you want and you would rather not apply to anything that's below the baseline or whatever, you can change that around. But let's say now I want to accept offer, right? It's not even what it says there, but it's going to understand. But it's going to take us through the accept path, right? It already knows my baseline is 5K, right? And so after the interview, let's say I calculated the true OTE of this offer is 4,500, right? 4,500 per month. The ICP alignment score after the interview, I think it's a little bit lower, right? I thought I was really excited. I thought it was super aligned. I gave it an 8. Let's say now I'm going to give it a 6. right? And my team culture, I thought it was okay, but again, a little bit lackluster. I'm going to give team culture a 5, right? I'm going to give it this information here. Accept decision is a no, right? My baseline to accept an offer is 5K. The true OTE of this offer is 4.5K. Based on my 6 and 5 out of 10, the OTE multiple is going to be 8.825, which is going to give us a finalized personal OTE of 3.7K in this role specifically, which is well below our baseline, right? And so this is the way that this prompt is going to work. And so I hope that this makes sense. I hope this helps you moving forwards. Just copy that prompt, paste it into GPT or whatever you use. And you should be able to use this moving forwards to decide whether or not you're going to accept offers, not accept offers, even apply to an offer or not. It's totally up to you. And you know, you don't need to follow this, but this is my guideline and formula and structure for, you know, what decisions I would make if I was in your shoes right now. Yeah.